Hey everyone, just a quick reminder that I'm still accepting questions for the upcoming Q&A video to celebrate 10K that should come out at some point once we actually get there, of course. So if you want to see your question potentially featured in a video, feel free to leave those in the comments of this video, on the recent community post, or in the question channel in the Discord. Thanks again for all your continued support, but with that, let's get into the video. Welcome back to the classic hardcore monk challenge, where I'm trying to survive as a self-found paladin that can never equip a weapon, shoes, or boots, and that can only wear cloth and leather, all while attempting to reach enlightenment through the completion of one monk-related roleplay event in every zone in the game. Last time, we took a nice, educational field trip to Ironforge's Hall of Explorers to learn more about the history of Azeroth, and more specifically the history of the dwarves, finished up Elwyn Forest by defeating Hogger and defending the Stone of Remembrance from the Defias, did a bit of questing in Westfall and Loch Madan, survived the dangerous trek through the wetlands so that we could quest in Darkshore, and then finished off with an enlightening pilgrimage across Darnassus and the rest of Teldrassil to visit all of the sacred moonwells there. As for our gear, in our leg slot we have a pair of vagabond leggings with 57 armor, 2 strength and 1 agility, a dryweed belt for our waist with 38 armor and 2 intellect, some patched leather bracers on our wrists with 31 armor, a robe of the Keeper with 28 armor and 4 stamina, and last but not least, we have a cloak of the People's Militia with 14 armor and 2 agility, totaling up to 168 armor, 2 strength, 3 agility, 4 stamina, and 2 intellect, all from our gear. After finishing our pilgrimage across Teldrassil, I figured that now would be a pretty good time to finish up the rest of Westfall. And so, after upgrading some of our spells, and learning an entirely new one that will be of great use in saving us from any pesky CC abilities, we then returned back to everyone's favorite desolate farmland to catch the Defias messenger just as he was leaving Moonbrook, and then helped to clear the town of some of the looters and pillagers.
Uh-oh. Nope. Well, I don't know if we can get into the building. Very nice.
Cheese.
And another green weapon. Wow. You know, I never really noticed how tall these things actually are. A cape! That is still not as good as our old one. Boots. Why? We have gotten the Thunder Brew.
Very good.
Can I kill something a level higher than me? I forget that I'm just incredibly, good at this game.
But after slaying Murk-Eye, and with the call of the sea pulling at me to explore its salty depths, I was reminded of the perfect destination for such an experience that I'd heard about from some of the friendly druids back in Darnassus.
You know, I think while we're down here, we should sample just a little taste of this Thunder Brew. Pretty good.
Inventory is full.
And it's another weapon. Who the heck is Brack? I want to kill him now. I need to catch up to him. Does he walk the... He better not walk the entire beach. Watch it just be like a two-handed sword, you know, after all of this. He finally turned around. Alright, we got him. Alright, was it worth it? Ooh, yes it was. I mean, this is only going to give us 2 armor and 2 stamina, but, you know, it is an upgrade. And we just had to backtrack up the entire beach to get it.
I can't carry it.
Ooh. Yo, that's pretty sick, actually. It is held in offhand, though. I still don't know what I want to do with these.
Well, past Rel, it would seem as if you're in luck, because I, current Rel, which will technically become past Rel by the time this is uploaded, just so happen to know exactly how you're going to handle offhands, because my past Rel, who is still technically your future Rel, just so happened to ask his viewers about this very problem in the last video, where he asked them to vote on 2 different options, where option 1 was to disallow offhands and keep both weapon slots entirely restricted, while option 2 allows offhands with the slight asterisk that I'll be attempting to limit myself to the ones that fit the RP. And while I did do my best to tally up everything as accurately as I could, I will say that a few of you didn't quite make your votes as clear as I would have hoped.
Option 1, but you can wear something like lantern etc. Is that not just option 2 then? Option 2, I guess, but I would rather nothing. So basically, you prefer option 1, but you're voting option 2? What?
So while I can't exactly vouch for complete and total accuracy in my counting, I will say that even with the potential margin of error, the winner of the 2 options definitely won pretty much by a landslide. And so, let us now finally reveal which of the 2 options you all preferred. It genuinely wasn't even close. I think it was like 90% option 2. That being said, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that while the results were heavily skewed in the direction of allowing offhands, both sides did provide some very good justifications for their preferences, which pretty much lined up perfectly with my initial thought process and my inability to pick how I wanted to proceed. Now, this next section is obviously going to be a bit of a tangent, though it is technically challenge related. Anyways, I would say that the biggest hurdle when it comes to these types of challenges is finding the right balance between setting restrictions that facilitate fun gameplay and then creating fun ways to justify those restrictions while adhering to the character archetype the challenge is based on, or essentially, consistent gameplay versus consistent RP. Now, you can certainly create fun and engaging content by leaning towards either side of the scale, but it's important to remember that both sides have their benefits and drawbacks. Leaning more towards consistent gameplay allows for a more personalized touch in creating restrictions that are not only enjoyable to engage with, but that are also concrete and leave little room for misinterpretation. But it comes at the cost of sacrificing some of the roleplay consistency. So for example, in my Thief Rogue series, I only wanted to wear items that I considered to be stolen, which I defined as anything obtained through pickpocketing, lockboxes, or chests. However, that meant that I could not equip any random green drops, despite the fact that by any reasonable definition of the word, taking an item off of a corpse should still be considered stealing. And while this created a very obvious inconsistency in the roleplay logic of that challenge, one that was often pointed out in the comments on almost every single episode, the decision to not allow them was purely done in service of the gameplay logic, because it increased the difficulty in a way that kept the challenge focused on the niche mechanics that I found the most interesting. Now, leaning more towards consistent roleplay, on the other hand, makes it a lot easier to stay immersed in the story aspects of the challenge, but has the downside of making the restrictions a little bit less concrete, either by encouraging you to make them overly complex so that the roleplay remains intact while still keeping some semblance of gameplay consistency, or by encouraging you to keep them very loose to fully prioritize the story and overall vibe of whatever archetype you're trying to adhere to. I think it's pretty clear that I tend to lean more towards the gameplay side of things, while leaving the roleplay to function in more of a supporting role. But in the specific case of offhands in relation to this specific challenge, while either option would slightly shift the balance of consistency towards one way or the other, I felt that the shift was still small enough to where I didn't really have a preference, which is the main reason why I allowed all of you to make that decision. And so, since the vast majority of you decided in favor of offhands, let's go ahead and clarify our first edict. The first edict now states that at no point will I ever be allowed to equip a weapon, with weapon being defined as any piece of equipment that directly deals additional auto attack damage and/or that is affected by any weapon skill other than unarmed. meaning that just as before, we cannot use shields, as these increase the block skill, and all damage must come from our fists or our paladin abilities. Another quick note, I keep forgetting about it, so I'm also going to clarify this while I'm at it, but all of the unique little items that you often get from mob drops or quest rewards are also acceptable, though just for fun, I have been selling all of the ones that don't really fit the RP, and the only one so far that I've been holding on to has been this singular magic candle that I got from a kobold back in Elwyn. However, while this does now allow for offhands, it doesn't really account for the condition that my offhand has to visually fit the RP. So here's how we're going to deal with that. Everything I've just said is the official, concrete rule that we'll be adhering to that forces us to remain unarmed while still allowing for offhands. However, to keep things concrete and to avoid the incredibly messy situation of trying to outline every acceptable type of offhand, this rule of simply allowing them is all we're going to commit to on paper, or I guess stone in this case, but as a self-imposed rule, just for the sake of fun, I'm still going to be ignoring all of the offhands that I don't think fit the RP. Now, if that just sounds like the exact same thing I proposed in the last episode, that's because it pretty much is. The only difference here is that while we've reached the same exact end goal, this way of thinking keeps all of the edicts completely concrete while leaving the less strict, more abstract rule as more of a vibes kind of thing. But at the risk of repeating myself, and just for the sake of clarity, while technically this edict does allow the use of any offhand that we find, for all intents and purposes, I'm just not going to do that, and I'm only going to use the ones that look like something a monk would carry. And if I equip something that you all disagree with, then it's not a huge deal. Just let me know in the comments, and if enough of you all point out the same item, then I'll just get rid of it and try something else. Now, was this reframing of the question entirely necessary? Not really. Will it introduce even more confusion? Potentially. But will it keep things consistent strictly from a rules perspective? Yes. At least in theory. So now that we're all on the same page, let's finally get back to the challenge. Though, one more quick side note, the moment where I obtained this was recorded prior to episode 2's release, so it did end up sitting in my bags for a while until I got the verdict, but I did eventually equip it, and you'll see that a little bit later.
For now, I'll take it, and then we'll just hold on to it and not equip it yet. But that is level 20. So, we can now get Consecration, which will absolutely tank our mana, and I don't know if it's worth the damage that it does. 64 over 8 seconds. Is that worth it for a single mob, or should I only use this against 2 mobs? I want to try and fight 2 of these guys. This may be a very bad idea because these guys freeze. Yes, it is a terrible idea, and I need to run. Is this a bubble scenario? This is a bubble scenario. Okay. Yeah, we should probably never do that again. Why did I take Consecrate? Like, I guess it'd be good against a single mob that's just got a lot of health. If you couldn't tell by now, I don't play Paladin. You know, I don't really care about anything else, but the 8 slot's very nice. I think that's, like, all of Westfall outside of the dungeon quests.
After finishing Westfall, we then head back to Stormwind for a bit of training.
Exorcism, Flash of Light, and Devo Aura.
Took a visit back to our old monastery to visit Brother Paxton. Ran into Antonio Pirelli, who unfortunately just had a mace, and then, since past me had finally received the verdict that offhands were in fact allowed, I decided to finally equip Grayson's torch to light our way into Duskwood, which just so happened to grant us 4 spirit and 15 armor. And while I did think that was a little bit weird for an offhand to have, it is neither a weapon nor a shield, and is in fact just a regular stat stick that just so happens to have a slightly weird stat, which I think is kinda cool. On the way in though, we also just so happened to pass by Kha'Zix, who, like Antonio, is another purveyor of rare goods.
I got what you need!
I don't know how I feel about this one. That could be like holy light, you know, an orb of holy, but I feel like this is like a pondering orb, you know, like you gotta be wizard maxing for this. But honestly, the torch just looks so much cooler. Holy protection potion? I did not even know this was a thing. Well, we will get that what is this even used for? I guess like Scarlet Monastery?
Let me ask you a question, and if you already know the answer, then I suppose this part might not be as fun for you, but for all of you like me who didn't know, what do you think happens when you try to punch something with an offhand equipped? Does it punch like normal but with the offhand still visible? Does it hide it? Does it exclusively punch with the main hand? Well, if you guess that it hides the offhand but then randomly flickers back into view whenever you enter the taking damage or casting a spell animation, you'd be correct.
Oh, they're male. Of course they are.
But with our trusty torch in hand to light the way into Darkshire, we then purchase some moonshine for the Dry Times quest, grab the flight path, and then fly right over to Lakeshire to deliver all the booze we've been collecting, before heading back into the lake to finally grab Oslo's toolbox.
Whoa! Why? This is the second time this has happened. No! Okay, yeah. First, we're grabbing this Briarthorn, then I wonder if we can get that chest. I'm falling back into my old habits. Another weapon. I don't think I pulled that guy in the end there. He didn't pull the last one. Neat. Don't really know what else I expected. More mail. Ooh, that's 2 strength. It doesn't look good though. It looks awful. It doesn't fit the RP. And well, you know, I'm not 100% trying to limit all of my armor to that. This just doesn't feel right at all. I don't think I can wear that. Please do not aggro. Okay, we're fine. Hunting pants. 3 agi, 2 spirit, 2 nah, we want the strength. Do you not want that chest? Like, you just cleared 3 mobs. I mean, I guess you do have fiery weapon and everything. I mean, if you're not gonna take it, I certainly will. I see why you didn't take it. Armor kits.
Have a good one.
But after finishing the few quests I felt comfortable doing here in Redridge, we then popped back over to Darkshire for the messenger quest, and then made our way back over to Darkshore to finish up the quests in that zone.
No! I'm so close. He's just getting carried by a 60. He's just doing it for him. Well, I guess I'll get this bruiseweed.
Be good. See you soon.
Alcohol. Ooh, would you look at that?
Can we stop with the lightning bolt and just follow me for a second? Thank you.
Oh, I forgot to talk about my talents. Now, the initial idea as I presented it in episode 1 was to focus on Holy, and the reason I planned for this was to give myself a small melee buff in the beginning and then slowly transition into buffing my healing spells, since I'd assumed that we'd quickly reach a point where my melee attacks wouldn't scale very well and that I would need to plan for consistently healing myself to keep myself alive throughout very long and tedious fights. That being said, while the fights are still quite long compared to normal standards, so far, surprisingly, my damage hasn't actually been that bad, and the fights aren't really long enough to where I need to plan for all that. And so, after some careful contemplation, I decided to throw my next point into Retribution with improved Blessing of Might. And once we get to the talents that say they need a weapon, perhaps we'll just be the guinea pig after all, and see if they're really telling the truth.
Alright, I guess. Please, just give me the pelt. Thank goodness.
For the Alliance. Be careful. Light bless you.
What level are these? 21, 19... Yeah, we can go do this. Oh, right, they have minions. We don't want to do that right now.
Ah, the great outdoors.
Goddess bless you. Asha Lala. Goddess watch over you.
Oh my gosh. Get me out of here, get me out of here. Woo! Why are you aggroing from across the entire camp? They just had to be gloves.
Inventory is full.
While we collected some relics for our good pal Onu, I felt inspired to do a bit of exploring at what little remained of the ruins of Mathystra, an ancient night elf city that was completely destroyed by the Sundering nearly 10,000 years ago. And while the Naga have recently taken it over, and while there also isn't really much left to look at, there are still a few of these kind of braziers, I guess, or wall fountains? I don't really know what these are, but I do think they look cool. Anyways, after a quick swim to see what lay beneath the water level and to feel the rushing water of the nearby fountain, I felt that the only thing left to do was to pay my respects to those who came before me.
Let's pour one out for the night elves. We shall drink the other. Oh. This might not be the best spot for meditation, but I think we've paid our respects.
We then hit level 22 by turning in the second ship quest, say goodbye to the rest of our booze.
I would drink the rest of these, but we should probably practice moderation.
And then head south to deal with this camp along the coast, as well as its resident Murloc fiend known as Murkdeep. And then, for the first time in probably forever, I chose to do Volkor's optional escort quest rather than just letting him stealth out on his own.
If you pull anything extra that we don't need to deal with,
Hello.
mail gloves. Thank goodness that went off without a hitch.
After returning to Aberdeen, we then get a new leather belt with some strength on it, which was actually the entire reason I chose to do the escort quest, as well as a pair of green bracers for completing the bounty on Murkdeep.
Everything is green.
But, with Darkshore pretty much complete, that brings us to the end of today's episode. And while I would have loved to keep the trend going of every episode ending with some thoughtful meditation, unfortunately, things just didn't quite line up for that this time around. On the topic of enlightenment goals though, out of the 13 zones/cities we visited, as of now, we've currently only completed 8 different goals. And as for the zones we still haven't done anything in, those would be Stormwind, surprisingly, Redridge Mountains, the Wetlands, Duskwood, and Ashenvale. Now I do have some ideas for what we could do in Stormwind, but admittedly, I'm not really sure about the other 4 areas. So if you have any good ideas for potential goals, feel free to leave those in the comments. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and let me know what else you might want to see from me in the future. One more thing though, recently I've started streaming parts of the challenge over on Twitch, so if you want to see me punch mobs for a really long time live, feel free to check out my stream linked in the description. So if you ever catch one of those moments, feel free to drop in and say hi. But since that's pretty much everything I have for you, thanks.